Hi, this is Jonathan from Waterfront Diving Center with this edition of Tech Tips. This is a pretty straightforward one. We often get people that come in and say, you know, my regulator's breathing wet. You know, why would that be? And there are a couple of different reasons for that. And I'm going to show you here with the second stage. One is, the first and most easy to check for leaks is the mouthpiece. Very often you'll get a tear right in where the mouthpiece attaches to the orifice of the regulator. You won't really notice it because it's small, yet it lets water in as you're breathing. So you get really wet breaths. So that's the easiest one to check. Another one would be a hung up exhaust diaphragm. The exhaust diaphragm is underneath the exhaust tee, and depending on the regulator, it's either easy to see or, as in the case of this one, a bit more difficult to see. But you can look in there, take a light and look in, and sometimes you'll get a piece of something stuck under the exhaust valve and holds it out just a little bit, like a purge valve on a snorkel. Holds it out a little bit, and as you inhale, water will squeak past the exhalation diaphragm. So that's a fairly easy one to check depending upon the regulator. Some exhaust tees come off very easily, which makes the inspection and cleaning easier. Some, like this, are a bit more difficult. And then another possible place for a leak to get water in is the inhalation diaphragm. Most regulators have a top cover that simply screws off like this, okay? If you start taking your regulator apart on your own, just remember in what order the pieces go in. I'm not necessarily advocating that people that don't feel they're tech savvy should attempt this, but in a field situation, it's an easy check. So you take the top cover off, and very often you have a ring, which is an inhalation diaphragm retaining ring, holds the diaphragm in place. Then you have an inhalation diaphragm. Okay, the inhalation diaphragm is made of silicone. Sometimes you'll get a tear or a hole in the inhalation diaphragm. So as you're breathing in, obviously water comes through the front of the diaphragm and it will breathe wet. In a catastrophic situation, which is very unlikely to happen, it'll breathe really wet. But a small little hole will let the water trickle in. I want to show you one other thing inside the regulator. I mentioned the exhaust diaphragm. You can see it there underneath when I took the inhalation diaphragm off. You can see much more clearly, you can see the exhaust diaphragm, so that if there was stuff stuck underneath it, you could access it from the top as well. My caution is, don't fool with this demand lever. Okay, if that goes out of adjustment, you really would have to bring the regulator in and have us adjust it. That is what adjusts the breathing resistance in the regulator, and I suggest that you don't monkey with that. But anyway, that gives you clearer access. And the final reason for a wet breathing regulator could be a crack in the housing for the second stage. That's very unlikely, but it could happen. If you didn't notice it, obviously if there's a crack here or on the other side or on the top, that would cause wet breathing as well. But again, that's very unlikely. So again, what I would do would be to check the mouthpiece first, take a visual look at the exhalation diaphragm if it's easy to spot. Third would be to go in through the top, take the diaphragm out, hold the diaphragm up to the light, and stretch it a little. That's the easiest way to find holes. And then finally would be a crack in the second stage. So that's kind of a quick study on how to potentially find a leak or a wet breathing regulator. Those are the most common causes of it. And I have one other little bonus tech tip today, and that's how many of you have had watches and this stinking little rubber keeper for the watch band comes off and it flops in the breeze and you catch it on things. Well, there's an easy fix for that as well. You go to your handy dandy Save a Dive kit or come to your friendly dive shop, and we'll go to our assorted O-rings and we just pop that on like this. Pop it on like this. And there you go, problem solved. You don't have the watch strap flapping in the breeze anymore. So that's an easy fix for an annoying problem. Thanks very much for joining us, and I want to remind you that on October 30th, which is a Saturday, we will have our annual underwater pumpkin carving contest. This year it's going to start at 1 o'clock, and we will have a barbecue here at the shop after the pumpkin carving and judging. Thanks very much for joining us. Bye-bye.